Last week there was a moment they won't remember. It was too small. A few seconds somewhere in the middle of an ordinary day. Something almost broke in them. Some thread that had been stretched thin for a long time came right to the edge of snapping, and then it didn't. They took a breath. They steadied. They kept going. And by the next hour they'd forgotten it ever happened, because it was just one of 100 small moments of barely holding together that they've stopped even noticing anymore. But he noticed, and he wants to tell them something about that moment, because it's the key to a surprise he has been waiting to show them. That wasn't them holding on. That was him holding them. The breath that steadied them, he gave them that. The thread that didn't snap, he kept it whole. The strength that showed up in the half second they needed it, that came from him. They thought it was just them pulling themselves together one more time. It wasn't. It was him catching them in a moment so small they didn't even know they were being caught. And here's the surprise. That moment wasn't the first time. It's been happening for the whole long season. They've just come through over and over. The times they nearly went under and somehow didn't. The mornings they couldn't have gotten up and somehow did. The nights their faith was sure to break and somehow held. They've credited all of it to themselves, to their own grit, their own endurance, the fact that they somehow kept it together. And the surprise he wants to open for them tonight is that it was never just them. It was him. The whole time, in every small moment they thought they were. While they thought they stood alone, God was carrying them. They just couldn't see it, because he works silently in those moments nobody counts. Yet tonight he wants to count them together so they can finally see how close he has been in the moments they thought they faced alone. He invites them to stay and see the truth. There is a mystery in how the Lord carries his people. It is usually invisible to them while it is happening. When he carries someone through a dark season, they rarely feel carried. They feel like they are walking, exhausted barely, but walking on their own, because he does not usually hold a person like a helpless child who has stopped trying lifting them. So they do not have to move. He holds them from beneath within their own steps. So their strength feels like their own. His support is real, but hidden, felt internally as their very own endurance. That is why they never noticed. All through that season, he was holding them exactly that way, from underneath, inside their own steps, so quietly that they experienced it as their own strength. And because it felt like their own strength, they gave themselves the credit, or sometimes the blame, for not having enough. They never thought that was God carrying them. They thought they somehow made it through. His rescue was quietly hidden inside what felt like their own bare survival, and there is a cost to missing it. When they think they carried themselves through, two things happen. First, they feel more alone than before, because they do not know they were being held. Second, they feel more afraid of what lies ahead, because if they barely survived on their own strength before, what happens when their own strength runs out next time? Failing to see the hand that held them leaves them both lonelier and more afraid than they ever needed to be. So this revelation is not just a nice thing to know. It shifts the ground under their feet, because once they see that it was not their strength that carried them, but the Lord, the loneliness lifts, because they find out they were never carrying it alone. And the fear lifts, because they find out what actually got them through was not their strength that could run out, but him who never does. That is why he wants to open their eyes to it tonight. Not just so they feel grateful, but so they stop feeling so alone and being so afraid, because they will finally see the hand that was holding them the whole way through. So let him count them with them. The hidden moments, the ones they wrote off as just themselves getting by. Count the mornings. Every morning of that long, the season they woke up with the weight already there before the day had even started, and they got up anyway. They thought that was just them forcing themselves through one more day. But where did that getting up come from on those? The mornings they genuinely had nothing left. That was him lifting them quietly inside. What felt like their own willpower. They called it surviving. It was him carrying them out of bed and into another day. Count the breaking points that did not break them. Remember those moments. There were moments like the one last week when they came right to the edge, when one more burden would have been too much, and then somehow it was not. They thought they held themselves together at those edges. They did not. He held them. Every breaking point they reached, and where they didn't break, he caught them a split second before they would have drowned. Count the nights their faith should have shattered. They were sure on those nights that this was the moment they would finally surrender and stop believing, walking away from the Lord entirely. Yet they didn't. A tiny thread held. They believed their own grip kept it together. It was his. Their faith survived. The season meant to destroy it, not because they held on tightly, but because he held that thread for them on nights they couldn't remember, the moments of unexplainable peace. In the middle of the worst times, there were small, quiet moments when peace settled over them out of nowhere. Nothing had changed, but for a brief moment they could breathe. They thought their spirit simply lifted. That was him, reaching them in the quiet, letting them feel his presence for a moment, even when they couldn't recognize it as his. Added up, the mornings, the breaking points, the nights, those moments of peace. That wasn't a season they survived by their own strength. It was a season of being held over and over in 100 small, the hidden moments, yet they called it surviving because they couldn't see the hand that was holding them. He was in every moment, carrying them quietly the whole way through. Here is the beautiful truth, plainly the reality the Lord wants them to see. That wasn't them holding on, it was him holding them through that long, difficult season, the present one they thought they barely survived on their own strength. They were being carried not in a way they could feel, because he holds a soul from the inside, where carrying feels like their own steps, endurance. So they experienced it as just somehow getting by. But it was him. In every tiny moment they thought they were holding themselves up. He was there, holding them. And tonight he wants them to finally see it. They couldn't see it, and he understands why. God works quietly in the Bloxley wrote. Seconds. Nobody counts. The morning they forced themselves up the edge they reached, and didn't cross the night their faith should have broken but didn't. It felt like their own bare survival, so they gave themselves all the credit or blamed themselves when it didn't feel like enough. They never realized that was God carrying them, but he was. The entire rescue was hidden inside what felt like them just barely scraping by. Soft music. And seeing this truth changes everything, because if they carried themselves through, they are more alone than they knew and more afraid of what lies ahead. What happens when their strength runs out next? Time, but they didn't carry themselves through. He carried them. So they are not alone. They never were. And they don't have to fear their own strength running out, because the power that got them through was never their strength. It was him, and he never runs out. Let us count those moments with them once more. The mornings they woke up with nothing left, that was him lifting them. The breaking points they reached and didn't break, that was him catching them. The nights their faith should have snapped, that was him holding the thread. The peace that came from nowhere, that was him near in the quiet. Not one of those was just them. Every single one was him holding them in a moment so small they never knew they were being held. They never carried that weight alone. That is the surprise. Soft music swells. That is the gift God wanted to reveal tonight. Not some blessing from the outside, but the truth of what was already there, hidden in plain sight. The hand they thought was theirs holding on tightly was actually the Lord's holding them through every single moment of that season. He was there the entire way. He carried them so they can finally stop believing they did it alone. They didn't. It was God the entire time. Before we continue, if the Lord has used this channel to bless you, to encourage you, and to remind you He sees you and loves you, would you consider supporting this work monthly? This ministry runs purely on the generosity of viewers like you. Every ongoing gift, no matter how small, helps us consistently spread His love and light to souls who need it. To join this circle of faithful supporters, click the support link in the comments below. Every contribution is a seed sown into someone's breakthrough. Thank you, and God bless you. So, what should they do with this truth? It is meant to change how they walk forward, not just how they feel. Tonight, they must stop crediting survival to their own strength. They have told the story of that season as something they white-knuckled through alone, but they must retell it. It wasn't their grip that saved them. It was His hold. When they look back now, they must not remember it as a time they barely survived alone. They should remember it as when He carried them through 100 hidden moments the entire way. That perspective is actually much more accurate. It heals the deep loneliness that past season left behind. They must stop fearing they will run out. The fear beneath so much of their anxiety about the future is thinking they barely survived on their own strength last time. What happens when they lack enough strength next time? But they were never running on their own strength. They were being carried by His. So the question changes. It is not whether their own strength is enough next time, but whether they will be carried next time. And the answer is yes. The same hand that held them through the last season will hold them through the Parkers. Next one. They do not have to be enough. They just have to be held, and they will. And when they reach the next edge, and they will remember who has caught them, there will be more breaking points. Ahead, more mornings with nothing left. More nights their faith feels thin. When those come, they must not face them as they did before, believing they have to hold themselves together by sheer will. Remember the surprise. Remember that every edge they ever reached, He caught them, and He will be there next time the same as He was at all other times, holding them when they think they are holding themselves. Now He must speak, now especially to one soul. They are at the edge right now, not last week, tonight. They have heard Him speak of the breaking points He caught them at, but they stand at one this very moment, and it does not feel like they are caught. Soft music. Sometimes it feels like drowning, as if the fragile thread of life and faith is suddenly about to snap, leaving no strength left within to endure it, wondering how they will survive the storm. All human strength they had, even the borrowed grace of yesterday, now seems to feel completely spent. But the Lord speaks. Soft music. With infinite love and divine mercy, that weakness is not the end. Their falling is just God catching them. When they feel completely overwhelmed, with absolutely nothing left inside them, that emptiness is where God works His greatest miracles of grace, since no self-reliance is left to mistake that they are still standing, even at the very precipice where they were sure they would fall, is not due to their own desperate efforts. It is God holding the lifeline, just as He has in every past trial. They have not fallen. They are securely held in the place of greatest fear. They do not have to hold themselves together tonight. They cannot, nor were they meant to. The absolute truth is they never sustained themselves. The Lord did. So they can let go of the struggle of trying to stand completely alone. Never. They only need to let themselves be held right here at the edge from the Father, who has rescued them every single time and is holding them securely now. If the trial is too heavy to bear, alone, or if they feel they cannot continue, struggling with painful thoughts or despair, finding it hard to keep moving forward, please, they must reach out and tell a real person, a friend, a pastor, a counselor, or a supportive crisis line. When dark thoughts close in on a believer, they must reach out to a crisis hotline, an emergency number, finding someone who can stand with them. At the edge, no one was ever meant to stand. They're alone. Letting a caring person help them is how the Lord catches them. Accepting this support is never a sign of weakness. The Lord has held people at the edge 1,000 times. They must let someone in. Believers are not drowning, they are constantly held. The thread they think is about to snap, He is holding tight, just as He always has. They do not need to find the strength to keep themselves from falling. They never had that strength. It was always Him. So let them be caught once more at this edge by the hand that has never let them go. They must stay and reach out, holding on to this truth even when they cannot feel it. It was never them holding on all this time. It was Him holding them, and He holds them still. A quick note before moving further. If this channel has ever encouraged a believer's heart or strengthened faith, they might consider becoming a monthly supporter. There are no ads here, just a community of believers helping carry this message of God's love to souls who need it most. Clicking the Ko-fi link in the comments allows joining the circle of faithful supporters today. Such generosity makes every single video possible with deepest gratitude, asking God to honor their giving 100-fold. Here is the comforting truth, the laugh. Lord wants to reveal tonight to believers. It was never them holding on, it was Him holding them. That brief moment last week, when things almost broke, but did not, was His hand. And it was not the first time. Throughout the hard seasons they thought they barely survived on their own, a strength they were being carried. In the mornings they woke up with nothing left. Facing the edges they reached and did not cross. Those nights their faith should have snapped. They called it survival, but it was Him holding them in countless moments, so small they never knew they were held. They could not see His quiet work. Silently, He holds a person from within, where the carrying feels like their own strength. So they gave themselves all the place, credit, and felt more alone and more afraid than they needed to. But now they can see it was not their grip that saved them, it was His hold. And that changes everything, because they were never alone, and what carried them was not a strength that could fade away. It was Him, and He does not run out. So stop telling the story as something they did alone. They were carried the entire way, and they carry that truth forward. They do not need to be strong enough next time, because they were never strong enough this time. They were held. The same hand that held them through the last season will hold them through the next. When they reach the next edge, they must remember who has been catching them at every edge before. And if they are at the edge right now, even in this moment, that is not them failing to hold. It is Him holding them. If it becomes too much to stand there alone, they can let a person hold on to them alongside Him. Tonight, they were never meant to stand at the edge by themselves. This is the gift for the beloved, not something arriving from the outside, but a truth that was hidden in plain sight all along. That the hand they thought was theirs holding on was His holding them through every small moment of their journey, seasons, all the way through, and in every moment yet ahead, so they can lay their burdens down. They do not have to hold themselves together. They never actually did. God has been carrying them all along in The quiet moments they believed they faced, completely alone in the divine strength they thought was their own. It was Him, their Lord. The breath that steadied them, the thread that held the morning they stood up. It was always Him holding them, and He holds them. That is the wonder. They were never holding on, alone. He had them the whole time.